Hi, I'm Rick Albert, and welcome to The Key to the City of Angels, the podcast where we unlock the secrets of Los Angeles real estate. With over 300 real estate deals under my belt, I've seen it all, from house hacking strategies that build wealth to helping clients close multi-million-dollar deals in one of the most competitive markets in the world. Every week, I'll bring you expert insights, market trends, and inspiring success stories to help you navigate the LA real estate scene. Whether you're a first-time buyer, an investor, or just curious about what it takes to thrive in the City of Angels, this podcast is your guide to making smarter decisions and achieving your goals. So grab your keys. It's time to unlock your path to prosperity in Los Angeles real estate. Hello, everyone. Rick Albert here with another amazing episode of The Key to the City of Angels. I am super excited to have Nick McGrue here of Polymath Legal. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so let's start with what do you do and how did you get into this space?
Yeah, so I'm a lawyer, and so I run the firm Polymath Legal. And at Polymath Legal, we help real estate investors lawfully raise capital so they can generate passive income while creating generational wealth. So essentially, what that means is that we help our clients often buy or build buildings, apartments, offices, things like that. And so with that, there's two components. On one side, if they're buying in California, then we'll help them with the transaction. So helping them work with the lenders and negotiating with the buyer or with the seller. And then on the other side, whether they're in California or elsewhere, they're going to have to raise capital. And so when you're getting passive investors, you're selling a security. And so there's lots of rules and regulations that you have to navigate. And so we help them make sure that they can focus on the building and the operations and not be worried about the police or the SEC or anything like that.
Because I always tell people, I'm like, hey, I have to follow the law because I'm too pretty for jail.
Exactly. I tell my
Right?
clients, I'm like, you look lovely, but I don't think orange looks too well on
I'll
you.
flush you out. Are a lot of the clients that are building, are they, because my understanding was a lot of these builders who are building these apartment buildings, they were building them with the intention of selling them, not actually keeping them and putting tenants in place. That was for somebody else to do.
A lot of times, yeah, you get a mix. A lot of times I'll
Okay.
have some that are developing and they're developing looking for somebody to buy it almost right at to buy to operate it
Right.
right after it's done. Other
Mhm.
times they might buy it and then plan to hold it for maybe 3 to 5 years and then sell it after that.
Oh, interesting. But either way, there's an exit strategy.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about these larger ones. I have clients in various ranges. Some are buying
Sure.
like 10 plexes and 20 plexes. A lot of them are buying 50, 80, 200 units. So especially when you get those bigger ones, because you're taking people's capital usually for those ones because they cost so much more, somebody
Uh,
doesn't want to have their capital tied up indefinitely. So
Indefinitely.
usually you're looking maybe a couple years ago when the market was a lot stronger, you were looking at 3 to 5 years. Now we're looking at 3 to 7 years is usually the hold that they're aiming for.
Interesting, because from my understanding, because of Measure ULA, the mansion tax, which most people have thought it only applied to single family homes. They didn't realize it applied to these big projects. And that's why a lot of developers started cutting back because that ate into their margins. Have
Yeah,
there been discussions? I know that's not necessarily your world necessarily, but I'm curious to see if people have touched on it.
in my world, it hasn't become much of an issue just because they're at such a scale that, yeah, they're going to have to pay a little bit more. They just underwrite that into the deal. And so if it still
Right.
pencils out, then it's just cost of doing business essentially.
Got it. Yeah, which makes sense, right? They just offer less for the land or they hold
Yeah,
on to it longer to
exactly.
offset. 'Cause we're talking millions of dollars per transaction.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
got it. That makes sense. Now, in terms of raising capital, what are some of the, because you're like, oh yeah, we help people raise capital legally. When would be an instance of it being illegal?
So you'd be surprised. There's probably a
Yeah.
lot more of it going on illegally than you would
Oh,
think.
I'm sure. That's why I'm asking, 'cause people probably don't know.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. So I tell people the quick and dirty test is not the final test, but if you are having passive investors, so you're saying, "Hey, write me a check and I hope things go well. I'm going to do all the work and then write you back a bigger check." So you have a passive investor, that means that you're selling a security. And so if you're selling a security, you have to register that or have an exemption. So So registration is like a public
Mm,
offering, very expensive, very long. And in the real estate world, you don't have the timeline to do that. And so
sure.
our clients are using exemptions. So we help them figure out which registration exemptions might apply for them. Then we help them figure out which one ultimately is the best for their objectives. And then we make sure that they are compliant with that. So if there ever is an issue, we can say, nope, we followed the rules. Here's our T's crossed, here's our I's dotted, and we're good to go.
Interesting. Because like sometimes I always hear, oh, we do the friends and family round. Like you always hear that whether it's on Shark Tank or whether it's somewhere else. Is something like that would be considered exempt, or it doesn't matter what the relationship is?
Yeah, it doesn't matter what the relationship is. There is a friends and family exemption, and particularly if you're raising like within one state, a lot of states will have state exemptions. We tip because my clients are raising from investors all across the country, so we're typically
Mm,
using federal exemptions, but there are some state exemptions and even some federal exemptions that allow you to raise from friends and family without quite as much red tape, but there still is some red tape you need to go through. So yeah, a lot of
mhm.
those times where I hear that, I'm like, yeah, that's not quite right. The thing is, though, what people always ask, they're like, wait, but I saw this person doing it, or I saw that person doing it. And I say, yeah, I was speeding the other day. I didn't get a ticket. Doesn't mean that it's legal. It just means that I didn't get caught, essentially.
Amazing.
Because yeah,
I hear
the
that all the
SEC is
time.
not knocking on every business's door and every real estate investor's door saying, "Show me your documents, show me everything." Really, they often come into play if an investment goes south, and then the investors are upset, and then they complain to the SEC, and then the SEC says, "Okay, operators, show me how you lawfully raised this capital." And so that's where it becomes an issue. So while friends and family, there are ways to do that. A lot of people do it incorrectly. And I'm not advocating for somebody to do it incorrectly, but hopefully, if they are a friend or family, hopefully they'll talk with you before they go call into the SEC about a problem.
Fair enough. And I guess we should probably preface like everything we're talking about is general, not to anyone specific. Anytime I
Yes.
interview like attorneys or whatever, I'm like, we kind of have to have this because somebody will be like, I heard it here. And it's, I'm sorry, you also heard on ChatGPT, but here we
Yeah.
are. So, how are these investors raising the capital legally then? Because you're right, you're talking what, $100 million in some cases. This is
hmm
big time money.
Yeah, yeah. So like I said, you either register and go public or you find exemptions. So the SEC's big concern is disclosure. Investments are going to go south, and sometimes that's the risk that you take,
Mhm.
hoping it goes up, but it might go down. If we're talking about a public company, you can look up and see what the CEO makes and look at their books and have a
Mm,
real picture into the company. With private companies, that public disclosure is not there. But the SEC does say, hey, there's certain things, certain information you have to give to your investors before you take their money so that they can make an informed decision. You've got to let them know about yourself, let them know about the project and the business plan, and let them know the risks because you're the operator. You know what skeletons are in the closet, and every
right.
deal is going to have skeletons in the closet. That's fine. We just say the SEC says, hey, you want to let your investors know that so they can decide, do I want to invest with this skeleton or maybe keep my money on the sideline this time?
Got it. And are these typically accredited investors that are investing?
Generally, yeah, especially if you're talking at the larger scale deals. I have some clients that are raising 2 or 3 million, and I've had some that are raising like 80 or 100 million. So at 2 or 3 million, you might not have all accredited investors. But if you're at
Mhm.
those larger scales, because with the exemptions, typically, and now in the last decade, there are some new exemptions that allow you to advertise and raise from anybody. But previously, if you wanted to advertise your deal and if you're trying to raise $100 million, you're probably going to need to go outside of your network in most cases. And
Right.
so for those ones, you are required to have 100% accredited investors. And still, in most cases, for the deals that I do, especially those larger ones, most clients are going 100% accredited anyway.
Got it. Yeah. And it makes sense in the sense of, all right, if they are an accredited investor, which for those listening, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, is basically you have a net worth of $1 million, excluding your personal residence. So it could be investment property, stocks, even cash in the bank. Which also, I know an investor, and he always laughed about that because if all of your net worth is in your property, you could just take out a cash out refi. And now the money, now you have cash in the bank. So it's silly, but that's the general understanding, right? That's the understanding for a accredited investor
Yeah,
on a
so
high
there's
level.
there's two common ways. There's 15 ways, but the two ways that
Sure.
apply to individual retail investors, one of them is your net worth. So yeah, $1 million or more minus your primary residence. or the other way is through income. And so if we're talking about an individual,
Right.
you've made $200,000 or more the past 2 years and expect to make that much or more this year. And if it's spouses, then we up that number to 300,000. So you're either a higher income earner or a higher net worth person to be accredited.
Got it. Okay. And the idea, at least from the government's perspective, is if they bring in this much income or they have that much net worth, they are financially savvy. And I use that in quotes because not everyone, like, who knows how they got their money,
Yes, I
especially
know
in
a lot
LA.
of not so savvy rich folks.
Right. I think it was when the whole like lottery was out when it was like over $1 billion, and Mark Cuban, that people are interviewing like, what should they do? And he's they shouldn't invest. Just
Yeah.
because they won the lottery does not make
Yeah.
them good business people.
Yes.
Put in a high interest savings account, live off that, you're fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gone over that. So what are some of the creative ways that investors are raising this capital to build?
I think a lot of it's building communities
Okay.
because you invest in people that you trust. That's the old adage. And
Yeah.
so people need to really know who you are and like actually know you, not just see you, but understand you, get to know you. And so a lot of my clients that have been more successful, that have done multiple successful raises, they have a strong community that they're pouring into. And it does take a lot of effort on their end that they're texting people, answering calls, answering those Instagram DMs and all that sort of stuff, and really letting
Mm.
them know, hey, I'm here for you. Because that's the kind of thing that if I'm going to give you my money, I want to know that if I do need you, and I'm not going to be the one that's pestering you all the time, but if there is a time that I need you, I want to know that you're maybe not going to answer right away, but going to respond. So yeah, building that community helps build that credibility, helps build that trust, and that makes people more comfortable in giving you their money and letting you go have some fun with it, so to speak.
No, it makes sense. Like just being able to Google a company, like just that being able to find them establishes credibility.
Yeah.
Is if you're nowhere to be found, it's, where are you? Or
Yep.
I see this a lot on actually on the lending side, same on the real estate side, but like a lot of lenders, they have like Gmail email addresses or like Yahoo, and it's
Yeah.
just no, dude.
Yeah.
No, be accredited, show some value.
Yeah, things like that. Obviously, it's not legally required, but from a practical viewpoint, I say, yeah, if you're asking for millions of dollars, you can spend the $10 a month to have a personalized email
Right?
domain.
Yeah, that was like my thought. Like I've had it where, yeah, mortgage brokers would reach out and I'm like, I'm not giving you anything.
Yeah,
There's nothing
especially
secure.
nowadays. I could see we're like 25 years ago when it was
Oh,
kind of new,
sure.
but nowadays there's companies you can probably spend like $100 and they'll set up the website, get your email domain, and like you're going. Like it's very simple nowadays. So yeah, that's something that you want to definitely be thinking about.
Yeah, I totally agree. What, so you mentioned some exemptions. Can you dive into that in case like someone wanted to get started in this? What are some of the exemptions they should be considering?
Yeah, so for real estate, the one that I use the most is Regulation D. And within
Okay.
Regulation D, there's two subparts, 506B and 506C. The reason that I like Regulation D a whole lot, particularly for real estate, is number one, there's no cap on how much you can raise. So some of the other exemptions have a limit on how much you can raise in a period. Regulation D has no raise limits. So, you can get that $100 million and there's nothing wrong with that. Another thing that I like about Regulation D is it's one where you simply just need to make sure you're in compliance. Some of the other
Mm.
exemptions, you might have to have a little bit of back and forth with the SEC or with an escrow company or other third parties. And so that's going to slow the process down. And with real estate, even with commercial deals, you might be looking at a 90-day closing window.
Mhm.
So if you're having to deal with third parties, that's going to slow your stuff down. Particularly if you're having to go back and forth with the SEC, you're not going to meet that timeline. So Regulation D, essentially, as quickly as your team and your lawyer can get everything together, you can start raising. So we've had some clients where, granted, these are clients that are experienced and we'd worked with before, but they reached out to us and said, we need a raise, and we have them set up to be able to take in capital within 10 days. And so it can be much quicker.
Mm.
So it's basically as quickly as you get your act together, you can start raising.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the other exemptions, even if you got everything buttoned up, you're still waiting on other people and it's going to slow you down. So that's one of the
Mm.
big reasons that I like Regulation D. Within that, I said there's 506B and 506C, and that's where we get back to understanding accredited versus sophisticated investors. 506C allows you to raise an unlimited amount of capital from an unlimited number of investors. You can even advertise, so you can do general solicitation, so letting people know about your deal. but 100% of your investors must be accredited. So that high net worth or high income. And so sometimes clients say, I'm not too sure. A lot of people in my network are not, at least not all of them are accredited. And I'm not sure how many other ones I can reach. And I say, okay, no problem. We've got another option, 506B. 506B says, okay, we'll allow you to have up to 35 unaccredited but sophisticated investors. The SEC has not done a great job in explaining what sophisticated is, but essentially we are trying to figure out, are they financially savvy? So have they invested in things besides stocks and bonds? What type of
Mhm.
work do they line of work? Are they in a financial space? Maybe do they have a degree in a financial space? Or maybe they have none of that, but they have a financial planner or a financial advisor. That person's knowledge can be
Ah.
substituted for them. So we're trying to figure out, can they assess and see, does this deal make sense for their financial situation? So you can have up to 35 of those people, and again, an unlimited number of accredited investors. However, for 506B, you must have a pre-existing substantial relationship with all of your investors. So you can't advertise at all. So it's got to be basically people that are in your network. And when we say pre-existing substantial, it means that you have to know them before the deal is on the table, and essentially whether they're accredited or sophisticated and the reasons why they meet whichever category.
Got it. Why do you think they've made this so complicated? Is it just because I know most of the time anything government related is always like reactive rather than proactive? But I'm just
Mhm.
kind of like curious, are a lot of these rules, do they have they come into place over the last 5, 10 years? Have these been in place since God knows when? Like, I'm just curious.
Yeah, a lot of these rules are quite old. The last kind of major overhaul was in 2014 with the Jobs Act, and that added some new exemptions. But yeah, before that, these rules are quite old. Yeah, I've had people ask this before. I think some of
Yeah,
the reason why it's kind of complex is, I think the SEC is purposely vague in some ways. And that's
sure.
because you get lawyers like me, they're like, okay, here's the rule they lined up. So let's figure out exactly how to get around that. Whereas if
Yeah,
they give you a general thing, then they have the discretion to evaluate a case by case situation if they wanted to.
got it. So they keep it vague enough to where they can pick and choose who they want to pick on.
hmm Now, and if you're not sure, there is a process. They don't always respond promptly or whatever, but you can do what's called a no action letter, and you basically say, "Hey, SEC, here's what I'm about to do. Here's what I'm thinking I want to do. Here's
Oh,
why we
okay.
want to do it. Here's why we think it's okay. Based upon what we told you, would you take action against us?" And if the SEC reviews it, they might send you a no action letter saying, "Based upon what you told us, we would
Sure.
not take action here." And so then, okay, and while they'll say that letter's not precedent, oftentimes it essentially is. They don't have to follow it, but they're likely going to follow it.
It's like a strongly worded guide.
Yeah, and at the very least, it'll take out any like malfeasance if you are doing something wrong. They can't say you
Mhm.
purposely were doing this, because you can say, no, we weren't sure and we asked you and you told us it was okay and we relied on that. So at the very least, yeah, we may have made a mistake, but it was not intentional because we were trying to do it the right way.
Got it. It's one of those where like normally it's- oftentimes in our lines of work, we try to say ask for forgiveness rather than permission. Here it's kind of like the opposite. We're asking
Yes.
for permission because forgiveness is rough.
Yes.
It's very, very rough.
Forgiveness is rough and sometimes hard to find.
So I get that. I get that. Now, for a lot of these developers and some of the transactions you're working on, it's mostly office and multifamily. But have you been seeing any trends over the last 12, 24 months, especially because this year they've passed a plethora of new laws in terms of rental laws, things like that in California. So I'm curious to see your take on that.
Yeah, one of the trends is clients are moving away from investing in California.
Right?
That's one of the big ones.
Yeah, people
Yeah,
don't get that.
yeah, a lot of my clients are buying properties in like the South, Southeast, and the Carolinas. Those are like Georgia, Florida,
Georgia.
Texas, and North and South Carolina. Probably for the past 5 years have been
Mhm.
a hot place where a lot of my clients are buying. It's the land's definitely, compared to California, much cheaper land.
Sure.
The rents are comparable, especially when you weigh in the fact that the cost is much lower,
Mhm.
and their laws are not quite as difficult for landlords to comply with.
That was my big thing. It was because I was quoted. There was some college, like local university, that quoted me, and they totally misquoted me. And they're like, "What do you think about all these rent control laws and stuff?" This is like 2020 when they. I'm like,
Mm.
"Look, I think the problem that people don't understand is that investors don't have to play ball. if they don't like the rules, they'll go somewhere else. He only quoted me that saying investors don't play ball. I'm like, oh, great. I'm like, not what I meant. Thank goodness it's like a local college and it's not like the LA Times.
Yeah.
Um, but it is true. I have a client, he's one of my biggest clients, and like for a while, every year I was helping him buy an investment property. And we're talking like houses with ADUs,
Mm.
whatever. And now we're on the trend of selling one a year. And he's moving all the money out of state. It's just one of those things where there are like yeah, you're missing out on some appreciation that LA has to offer, but for some people, they don't want to assume that kind of risk. And I would also imagine the cost of construction also plays a major role.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I tell a lot of my clients, I say, if when you've got your money, LA is a great place because it's going to be preserved and it's going to grow slowly. But if you're trying to grow that money, the cost and the acquisition and startup, it's just very hard to start in LA.
Yeah. I'm curious because I had a theory, which so far has been proven wrong, which don't tell my wife that I was wrong. But one of my theories was that we're heading towards institutional investors when it comes to building these big apartment complexes, primarily because the laws have gotten so complicated, an institutional investor could have an attorney on staff. Right. So a lot of these mom and pops, if they're running into issues, they're forking out tens of thousands of dollars, or they're being forced to negotiate cash for keys. Are some of your clients on these bigger scales? Is part of the reason why they're able to scale is because they can have some of that stuff in house. Are you seeing any of that? Because again, this is just a theory. I have no idea if this is true.
Yeah, and part of along with that too, it's not even necessarily having an attorney in-house or anything like that, but you're scaled, so you're having so much more experience and so much more
Hmm.
iterations of things happening that you can just develop better practices because you
Fair
can get
enough.
hosed one time and then you say, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. Whereas if you only have one or two opportunities, you might not have those experiences. And yeah, I think
Hmm.
more so it's just that they're scaled. So with that one, they do have the capital to have the in-house teams that they need, but then also because they're having more units, which means there's more opportunity for things to go awry, they're seeing that happen and are able to course correct because they're getting that experience a lot quicker than somebody with maybe one or two units. If you got 500 units, you're going to experience 500 times as much as somebody with one unit, essentially.
Got it. So they wouldn't necessarily need an attorney on staff. They could just have very knowledgeable staff at that
Yeah.
point. So
Yeah. And
instead
you
of
also have the
paying,
capital to say, hey, we're thinking about doing this. So let's pay a couple $100 an hour and talk with an attorney first. Whereas a mom and pop, you might not have the
mm,
margins. Or if, as a lawyer, I'm biased. I'm going to say you always should have the money for that because it's a
I
necessary
know.
expense. But you might think it's not necessary and say, yeah, I don't want to waste my money on that. Our margins are slim. Whereas when you're scaled out, you've got the margins to pay for an hour of an attorney's time to try to not have to pay 20 hours of an attorney's time if you do it wrong.
Sure, no, of course. On some of the development side, when you're negotiating for your clients or you're getting them ready to raise capital, is there a difference between what type of property they're building? So, like office space versus residential versus condos versus something else? Or does it not really matter? It's all building, it's all real estate.
For the capital raise itself, that's not going to change too much. It's going to
Sure.
just slightly change your messaging because you'll talk about your
Fair.
business plan. So obviously your plan's going to be different, but yeah, you could use theoretically the same style of documents and exemptions for an apartment building, a build to rent neighborhood, a condo complex, an office building, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, the raise portion is not super specific to the product that you're building or buying.
Got it. And what are most of your clients doing? What are they mostly building or developing?
Mostly multifamily apartments. I'd say that's number
Okay.
one, multifamily
Okay.
apartments, either buying or building, and then followed by various commercial uses. A lot of them now are doing mixed use commercial with residential. And then in Texas, I have a decent amount of clients. I just help them with the capital raise side, but
Hmm.
they're doing a lot of it recently in the last 2 years or so, a lot of neighborhoods like developments that are single family homes, but it's build to rent. So they're building like a neighborhood with 200 houses, but they're going to be renting those 200 houses.
Interesting. And then they'll eventually, the exit is either sell the community or sell off the homes individually.
They're doing the sell off the homes to their sell off the community. Or
Sell
even
off the
some of
community.
them too will maybe they'll because Texas has so much land. And so they
I know.
might get a subdivision that can have 1,000 houses and they might say, I'm going to develop 250 of them and then I'm going to sell off portions of this development to other developers and they can develop 300 and this guy can develop 100, etc.
It's funny. I know someone, what he did, this is in Northern California, kind of like Central California. He bought a big like plot of land, subdivided it, and then was selling off each plot to like friends that he knows. And then he was using that money to help build his house.
Yeah, I've seen that. You do
Right.
that in phases sometimes. Yeah.
Right. It's just obviously much smaller scale. So let's say someone really wants to get into this, right? Hey, I'm an aspiring developer. What are some things they should be doing to get started before they start calling you asking for help?
The first thing I'd say is you want to develop your buy box, or if with a
Okay.
developer, it's your build box. What exactly is it that you're trying to build and trying to accomplish? One thing I see people do, especially people that are eager and wanting to get in, they don't know where to start, which is understandable. And so
Sure.
instead of saying, I want to build a four-story apartment complex and spend my time researching and networking with people that do that and diving into that world, they'll look at apartment complexes and RV parks and office parks and subdivisions. And so they're spreading themselves out. And with that, they're not really getting the specialized knowledge or experience that they need. And so it's going to slow their process down. And so I say, figure out what is the goal. And you don't necessarily have to know it right away, but explore
Sure.
a little bit and then say, okay, I've seen all these options. This is the one I'm going to focus on for now. And that's one thing too. You can start on one and try it out and say, I didn't like that and move to another, but you don't want to just keep bouncing around without actually sitting down and trying to start executing. Because in that, you're just learning a little bit here, learning a little bit there, but you're never actually moving forward. So I say, figure out what your buy or build box is, know what it is you're trying to accomplish, and focus on that so that you can start making traction versus just spreading yourself and being open to everything, so to speak. So yeah, figuring out what it is that you want to do. And then I'd say you really do want to have a team and a mentor if you can, especially when you're talking about larger scale real estate. It is a team sport. And
Oh yeah.
so you really want to have that network and have a team, and probably you don't have to have an actual partner, but something to think about because it is a lot of work. But you do want to have your professional team. So you want to have a good relationship with a lender and a lawyer and an accountant. And if you don't know business underwriting, you're going to want to have somebody that knows how to do business modeling and underwriting so you can make sound predictions. But yeah, so understanding what it is you're trying to do, then build out your team, and then I'd say get knowledgeable and get ready to go. There's a balance you want to hit. You don't want to go out and have no idea what you're doing, but you also don't want to be in analysis paralysis where you're just learning and learning and learning and learning and learning and learning and learning. 5 years later, you're still learning and you know a whole lot, but you haven't actually taken the steps yet. And I get the uncomfortableness of that, but at some point you got to say, listen, I've got a team, I've got relationships, I've got a mentor, I know enough, and I will obviously learn as I'm going. Because even my most experienced clients, they're still learning new things as they
Sure.
do new deals. And don't think that you need to know everything. You do want to make sure you have a baseline knowledge. But once you have a working knowledge of whatever product you're trying to build, start looking for a project and start looking to make the steps to actually go forward in that.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Because then, like, I also meet like a lot of people who want to just start off investing in general, not necessarily development. And so I'm like, have you thought about house hacking? When you buy property, rent by the room, like, why would I do that? I'm like, intro to property management. You have to have a roof over your head. You're gonna learn real fast how to fix things. Like I'm not a plumber. I am not an electrician. But I understand the basics. So if someone tries to screw me over, I know how to call them out on it. That's how you can develop some of that experience. So it's
Yeah.
to your point, it's like you jump into it. It's like, yeah, you're gonna make mistakes,
Yep.
but real estate in general is very forgiving. That is something
Yeah.
I've learned.
Yeah.
It's like you can screw up big time and still come out okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, now, do you do any investing yourself?
I do it passively. I
Okay.
see all the headaches that my clients have, and I'm like, I don't want to take
You
on the
mean too
headache of being a
much?
landlord.
Too much.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
So I do passively. I do have one. I have an Airbnb in Florida that me and a friend own directly. But
Yeah.
other than that, I do passively. But I'm like, yeah, I see what all you guys have doing. I'll focus on the law and give my money to people that actually focus on the operations. Because yeah, don't want to be a landlord.
You just wait, like I do have a financial planner, financial advisor, and I have people like, Rick, you're pretty savvy. Why do you need one? I'm like, because I know real estate. I'm like, I'm delegating all this
Yeah.
other stuff to other people to help me out, so I don't have to learn it. I will gladly do that. You're delegating, you're focusing. Was it Gary Keller's book, like one thing? It's like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
focus on
great
your
book.
one thing.
Yep.
Yeah, it was. And it's like you can't multitask. You can't be all things to all people. So it's like you focus on one thing and get very good at it.
Yeah, yeah. Work in your zone of genius.
Yeah. What made you get into law?
Man, I was in ninth grade. There was a show called The Practice, and I just liked that show. That was the first
Yeah.
time I got, and my dad was like, "You could be a lawyer if you wanted to," and that kind of just stuck with me. And then I'm originally from Washington State, so I went to the
Okay.
University of Washington. And when I started there, they said, "Hey, here's a listserv for pre-law students," and I was like, "I'll just be on there. I'll get some emails. Maybe I'll go to a couple of meetings." And so it's in there planted a little bit. And then during my sophomore year, I took a class called Management 100, which was basically an intro to business law. And I just loved it. It made sense. It clicked. I'm a very kind of rule-based person and logical person, and the law is that way. And
Oh,
so I
very
was
much
like,
so.
oh, I really like how this works. I'm intrigued by this. I'm fascinated. And so that's when I knew I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to law school. I like this stuff. And
That's
yeah,
cool.
then it was going to law school. So that law school is what brought me down to LA. I went to Pepperdine for law school and then enjoyed the sunshine so much that here I am almost 20 years later.
I moved down here in 2010.
Yeah.
And I always grew up in California. I grew up in the Bay Area, I lived up near Sacramento. But I was like, you know what? I haven't heard great things about LA, but I'll give it a year. And like here I am coming up on my 15th year anniversary.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I thought when I came down here originally, I was like, I'm gonna go to law school, do my 3 years here, and go right back up to Washington. And then when I graduated, I was like, okay, maybe I'll stay for a year or two. And probably 6 months in, I was like, yeah, you know what? Now that I don't have school, I actually really like it in LA. So I'm gonna stay here.
People always ask like, why is LA so expensive? And I'm like, where in the world can you go surfing in the morning and snowboarding that same afternoon? And I'm not saying I do either of those, but it's the concept. Like if I want Ethiopian food, I can go to Little Ethiopia.
Yep.
All right. If you go to some other states, I won't name them because I don't want to bash them, but it's like you go on a step stool and you see the entire state. Right?
Yeah, people always say to LA, I'm like, great, stay away. We don't need any more
Right?
people because I love
Oh,
it here.
people are like, people are leaving LA County in droves. I was like, that's good. We don't have the space for them,
Yeah.
which is why rents have continued to be stable or climb a little bit. And that is just like we just don't have inventory to begin with. So I was like, okay, yeah, you do you, I'll do me, and
Yep, exactly. I'll enjoy my
whatever.
sunshine and my beach and my mountains and all the vineyards and all the types of food I want and all that good stuff.
I was a total dick to my brother. He called me. I called him. I was like, "Hey, just checking in. How you doing?" He's like, "I'm good. I'm just shoveling snow." He's in like Nebraska, and he's like, "What are you up to?" And just to be a dick, I was like, "I think I'm going to go to the beach." I'm like, I don't have to worry about shoveling snow. This is fantastic. So for your developers that are developing out of state, are they from LA? Are they local? Or are they actually based in those there, or do they end up moving offices? I'm just curious how the migration happened, especially with you being here in LA.
Yeah, it's a mix because typically is federally based. So I do have
Sure.
clients that I do security stuff all across the country, but I do have clients that have offices in LA. They're based in LA and they have employees and a team all in LA, but then they're just buying and developing and building in different places. Because a lot of
Okay.
times they're like, for the price of me buying a place in California, I could almost buy and build half of it in a different state because of the
Sure.
acquisition costs.
Right. And I wonder, so LA, it's a fortunate, but I understand like we are often perceived as being very flashy. For when you're raising capital, does the address matter for their office? Yes, we're building in Texas, but we have an office in downtown LA. Does that kind of stuff resonate when they're trying to raise capital?
It's a mix for
Okay.
those larger projects. If you're trying to raise $100 million, a lot of times you are going to have some institutional capital, so like family offices or
Hmm.
investment firms, things like that. I wouldn't say that it fully matters, but it matters a bit more there. But if you're doing a smaller raise and you're going to have retail investors, typically that doesn't really matter at all. I have a lot of clients that are operating out of their home because they're not
Right.
needing a full-on staff in an office. And so they operate out of their home for the most part, have a conference room place that they can use if they need to, but they're mainly just have a remote setup and they're still able to raise capital perfectly fine.
Okay. Yeah, that was what I thought was going to be. I thought it was like, because I remember when everyone's like, oh, office space is gone. And I'm like, I can see it downsizing because some people still need that LA base office. So to
Yeah.
your point, it's like a conference room, it's a virtual address, whatever. But I
Yeah.
was just curious on like perception. Do they drive the fancy cars, all that just to give the perception, hey, we're successful, you should join us?
I'd say no, and I think on
Okay.
in some fronts that can almost do the opposite. If you're driving all the fancy cars, especially, I tell clients not to do that. If that's what they do, that's what they do. But you want to be having videos of you driving your fancy car and getting on your private jet, and then also you have a deal that's getting foreclosed upon, or you couldn't pay distribution this month. And so
Right.
I do tell clients to be cautious. But yeah, definitely people are not looking for that necessarily. And I
Sure.
know that social media makes it seem like that. There's all the people that are flashy like that. And I can't speak on people that I know, or that I don't know. But some of that stuff that I see, I'm like, you are not doing what you say you do. I can tell by how you talk that you're not walking the walk that you're claiming that you do. But you're acting like it. You're showing the fancy stuff, but I can tell most likely behind the doors, things are not quite what you're projecting outward.
Yeah, it almost seems like if you're trying to raise capital, you need the attorney, but also like a PR person.
Yeah.
Find that balance of you want to show that you're successful because you know how to make money, but not so much of is that where all my money's going?
Yeah.
Right? Oh no, I need the private jet to fly to Texas. No, dude, you can fly coach. You're fine.
Yeah.
You're okay. This has been actually a really interesting conversation. I like
Yeah,
really
enjoyed it.
appreciate it. How can people get a hold of you? Is there anything that people should know, like a newsletter or anything like that?
Yeah, so you can find me on social media. It's at Nick the Lawyer. That's Nic the Lawyer.
With the
And
Lamborghini or without?
with Sans Lamborghini.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, Nick the Lawyer on socials. And then also one thing that I do is I do a thing called Nick's Law Lessons. So I'm
Okay.
actually a professor of law as well. And with the firm, I see either questions that clients will often have, or sometimes even mistakes that a lot of clients are coming to me with. And once a month, typically the first Wednesday at 12 noon, I'll do a free webinar, or at least free for the first 100 people. And it's about 30 minutes of a lecture, a planned information session, and then we do 30 minutes of Q&A. And that's free. If you go to
Amazing.
nixlawlessons.com, so NICSLESSONS.com, you can sign up for that newsletter and be made aware of that. The live versions are free. If you do want to see the replays and get the collateral and all the videos from the past like 2 or 3 years I've been doing this, that we charge either $49 a month or $500 a year. But if you want to choose the live, I have some people that just come to the live ones every time for free. And I'm like, great, I do it as a service. It does get me some clients, but also I'm very much about educating
Yeah.
because I think the more informed my clients are, the better that I can do a job at protecting them or making sure they're doing the right thing. So I really do try to make sure I'm educating whether it's my client or not so that people don't get into trouble. Because like we were talking about earlier, a lot of times people just don't even know what they're doing is wrong. And so I try to make sure I'm shedding light on those blind spots that people might have.
You know, because I do a lot of like webinars and stuff too for people I know. And if anything, it also holds me accountable on keeping up with the latest information.
Yeah.
Because there's so much, whether it's, I mean, I don't really talk law for obvious reasons, but there just to keep up with some of this stuff is so difficult.
Yeah. It's ever evolving for sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Nick, thank you so much for coming on the show. I
Thanks for
really
having me.
appreciate it. Maybe we'll have you on again. We could talk about new laws that may have changed or how
Let's do it.
developers are changing their mindset. So I really appreciate it. And thank you guys for listening or watching, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for tuning in to The Key to the City of Angels. I hope you found today's episode helpful as you navigate the world of Los Angeles real estate. Whether you're looking to buy your first home, expand your investment portfolio, or sell in this competitive market, I'm here to help you succeed. Let's connect. Visit my website or follow me on social media to learn more about how I can help you achieve your real estate goals. And if you're ready to take the next step, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to work with you. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might benefit. Together, let's unlock your potential and make your real estate dreams a reality.